Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of 100% Uptime, the podcast with Dave and Ken. I'm Ken Adams, co founder of P2P Labs, joined again today by Dave George, CEO and co founder of P2P Labs. And hey, Dave, who do we have the pleasure of having on the show today?
Well, Ken, we've got a special guest today. Today we're joined by Katie Merrill. Katie, you are the founder and CEO of B-Lynk. Katie, before we get into it, I just want to say welcome to 100% Uptime.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. It's great to be here. This will be fun.
Excellent, excellent. So let's start off, Katie. Take us back. I did a little research on your LinkedIn profile, and so take us back, say 16, 17 years ago when B-Lynk was founded, or perhaps even a little earlier. And tell us about a moment or an experience early in your career that really shaped how you think about communication and user engagement and product adoption today.
Okay. It's a good one. Yeah, so if I take us back before 16 years, we're going to get into like a very unique era of my career, which doesn't have a lot to do with communication solutions. Actually, prior, to getting into the industry and starting my company, I worked for General Mills, which is, a food manufacturing company. So I studied logistics in college. So it was really an operation focused, like very early on in my career. And General Mills, I worked for Mosaic. So just like very different than, this telecom, UCaaS, CCaaS technology arena that I hang out in today. But it was about 16, almost 16 and a half years ago when I started B-Lynk. But if you back it up a few years before that, when I left this manufacturing operations thing, I was hired by a startup called Televations, and it was a back in the day just called hosted PBX. And they brought me in as a salesperson, Televations, and they were selling cloud VoIP. And in those days, nobody really understood VoIP. It was very new. It was early adopters that were using it. I was in my mid-20s and I was like, cool, I'll take a sales job selling something I absolutely know nothing about. And I've actually never even been a salesperson before. And so that's kind of how I started my career in sales, but also back to your question with communications and getting kind of into the technology side of things. And even while I was at Televisions, I was only there for a few years. It was a startup. It was venture backed. They ended up getting acquired. I left right just before that happened. And really, that's when I was very intrigued in not only communications technologies, but entrepreneurship. And so when I left Televisions, it was really because there was a huge gap in training, in adoption and enablement for the users of this, what at the time was like really new technology. So I was out running around Tampa, Florida, selling, cloud-based phone systems, busting it. Nobody knew who we were. We had no brand recognition, a startup. And so it was hard selling these deals in the early days. And so it's like, I would sell something and then it's like, well, how do we use this? How am I going to teach my customers how to use this? It took a long time for me to sell this. Now they don't know how to use this. And I kept seeing that same pattern after every deal and every deal. And then some of the deals got bigger. And then the problem became, bigger. And, contact center stuff. So we've sold a big contact center deal. Nobody knows how to train on the reports or the agents and the supervisors and the monitoring and the whispering and all the functionality of a contact center. So it was a lot of like learning, just, in the field, basically.
Yeah.
So Katie, you used the word, I'm going to say pattern recognition, right? You said that you were seeing patterns and things that that had to get done. So still looking back, was there a common thread even from General Mills, like in other
Mhm.
words, was there anything in your
Mhm.
career path that now that you can look back, you could say, you know, maybe you didn't fully realize it at the time, but it,
Mhm.
it clearly got you to the point of creating B-Link, or even, you know, how you even think perhaps about the product adoption and
Mhm.
how to do this training
Mhm.
and so forth. Like, was there
Mhm.
something that maybe you think was a corollary or a common thread?
Yeah, I would say, you know, from my time before I was at Televisions and before I was in UCAS, it's almost like my
Yeah.
career was I started working, my initial career was with these giant monster companies, right? And I think
Okay.
what I saw
Okay.
as a pattern is that I kind of kept wanting to get smaller and smaller. And then until I realized that Televisions, like this entrepreneurial thing looks pretty cool. Like the founders are pretty smart guys. And if I can work this hard at this company, what could I do on my own? So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of saw that pattern. And then I even think after I started B-Link in 2010, it was initially based on this challenge or gap in training content and customer education and enablement, but that
Right.
pattern has really continued throughout my years with B-Link, because the problem that
Interesting.
I solved originally when we started has evolved. So now our services have evolved and our offer has
Okay.
evolved.
So so I want to dig into that. So obviously when you started B-Link, there was a specific gap that
Hmm.
you were trying to fill or resolve, right? And maybe that was even the reason why you said to yourself, this is why B-Link needs to exist. Is
Yes,
that a fair
yes,
statement? Okay.
absolutely. Yes.
But you're saying that this gap actually in some ways has gotten larger
It's
as
changed.
we've
Yeah.
okay. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How has it, what was it before? Was it
Hmm.
truly just training and onboarding,
Hmm.
or and how has it changed?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's actually gotten wider and it's changed. It's like we got bigger and then
Okay.
we like turned on a side. Um, and I think from in the beginning days, we were solving this training challenge, adoption challenge. And when I say training, I mean virtually training end users. So these are business users. These are really just regular people that are at their job that came in the next day and they have new technology that they need to use to answer calls, to place calls, to communicate with other teammates, employees, customers, etc. So, we're training those people typically virtually. So we're on
Mhm.
a virtual meeting, showing them how to do things, explaining how to do things. And then from a content perspective, and the business has always had two pieces: this training component that is actually talking to people, training them virtually, in some cases on site. And then the other side is all the digital content. So that's your enablement stuff. Those are your videos, your guides, your supporting assets that allow those end customers to be successful for the life cycle of their contract.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in the beginning, our audience of end users that we trained, or either one of those products, was very specific to BroadSoft. So Mike Tesler's company,
Okay.
BroadSoft, those were our main customers,
Platforms.
very
Okay.
platform
Got it.
specific. And that was for about
Yes.
7 or 8 years from when I started the
Mhm.
company into when Cisco
Okay.
acquired BroadSoft. At that point, that's
Sure.
where I realized the gap that we're solving today is actually bigger, because there's a NetSapiens platform, there's a Metaswitch platform, there's
Sure.
other platforms that are proprietary, there's adjacent products that work with these UCAS platforms that need training. It could be
Yes.
SMS, it could be call recording, call
Mm-hmm.
reporting, E911.
Dare I say, dare I say agentic AI and other AI solutions that are being layered
Agentic
on top?
AI, everything
Yeah.
that's layered on top,
Yes.
CX, right?
Yes.
So the gap got bigger
Yep.
because there were actually more platforms than the little world that we were living in for the first like 7 or 8 years,
Or moving
um,
parts. Yeah.
more moving parts. And then from a shift perspective, I look at like what we were doing in the beginning of the company, the first like probably 6 years, where we were doing tons of videos, guides, like digital assets, selling them as an asset. And we still do that today. But what started
Sure.
happening where customers were saying, hey, you created this amazing video, or people are loving it, customers are using it, but the software is changing. So I need to put in a change order for you to update everything. And when you spent, 4 or 5 years creating all this stuff, and then all these customers are coming back saying, I need to change this, I need to change this, and they'll pay for the change. I said, we need to do this in a better way. What if we offer a maintenance option that allows us to update those as a service as part of their original agreement, or
Right.
a knowledge-based component where we're actually creating a microsite that looks just like their main marketing site, but those assets live there, we maintain it. That's like a full service knowledge base, basically custom knowledge base experience where we handle all of the content and the site itself, and we integrate with their main website. So we can do, search functionality across sites.
Right.
And it can help even to drive SEO. So,
Nice.
that's where the services that we offer, it wasn't that the gap got bigger, the gap changed.
Mm-hmm.
But I still see a lot of companies in general still talking mostly about training and onboarding. And what I just heard you say is, well, that's certainly still important. You have added, I mean, you've said it a couple times, and I think I've mentioned it, when I researched what you guys do, and I've known you for a couple of years now, but you're also about product adoption. You're also about empowerment, engagement. If you're looking at all of those things, onboarding, training, and of course the empowerment, engagement, and product adoption, which of those are the real battlefields for you today, and which ones maybe aren't as much of a battlefield for you?
Yeah,
Like which one?
Great question. So they are all kind of still, but I think the biggest piece, and it kind of depends on the market. So if we're servicing a customer that sells into the SMB versus the enterprise. So
Yes.
if you talk about enterprise first, that the battlefield of training is an event in the beginning, right? Think of selling a massive deal. It could be, hundreds of locations, thousands of users. Maybe there's a contact center component to that. And this is a massive project, both from a technical standpoint and migration standpoint, and the training side of that. So the battlefield for us in the enterprise side is we look at that as like training is an event that happens on the time of customer onboarding. It's tied very closely to product adoption. So any user that exists in the company at the time of the technical migration needs to get trained in some way, shape, or form virtually, and actually have a trainer, somebody that they can talk to get up to speed with this. And a lot of times in those scenarios, we do train the trainer. We're maybe not training 1,000 people on a call or something like that. We're training a power team or super users to get comfortable with it. So that part is key. But in the enterprise too, the subscription piece is where adoption comes in play.
Okay.
So
let me interject a question here before we kind of shift here, because I can feel that shift coming, and I want to know more. I'm gonna press you a little bit, but first I have a question for you. Again, I look at a lot of companies, and I think their training approaches, they're a bit traditional, and I'm wondering if they're falling short. And I look at the tech industry. I mean, today everyone says this and you almost think it's trite, but then when you look back, you realize that we are moving faster today than 20 years ago. There's no question. Before you move to the second part of what you were going to present, let's dig into that a little bit. Like, do you believe that what companies are doing from a training perspective might be a bit outdated, or a little bit, the methodology might need a fresher approach or a better approach?
I do. I feel like, and not to say that our services are outdated at all, because now with AI, if you do a training session and it is, let's say it is a contact center deployment, right? And there are agents that need to get trained, and there are supervisors that need to get trained. This is a very big change from whatever system they had before. There is a training component as part of that customer onboarding. That's not outdated. That's change, and that's always going to be the case whenever we're migrating from one, technology to another. So that
Right.
still exists, but I do think that the evolution has been from a content perspective in terms of layering in AI. So, and not in terms of using AI to create the content, using AI to leverage the content to provide a CX support experience for those end customers, instead of doing a search from a KB and pulling up a PDF or a video or a guide or whatever. Ask the KB, how do I do this, and get a modern chat GPT style response. All of those responses are coming from the content that had to be created. So chat, AI is smart, but not that smart. Like, if there's no documentation for it to reference, it can't respond,
Oh, it hallucinates. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yes.
So that's where B-Lynk can certainly help bridge that gap, right? In other
Right.
words, a lot of companies, regardless of size, they don't have a dedicated knowledge base to even start from, to pull from. So does B-Lynk then come in and help that company, service provider or end user, enterprise? Do you help them to sort of understand that and identify what's needed to get that solution, um, the data that's going to make it work correctly,
Yes.
appropriately, and improve CX?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And it all starts with the product. It's like layering of, like, there's product information, but then there's also customer support history, right? So if you can merge the two, or use the information in both of those places to be prepared to, answer customers' questions at the right time, right when they want them. But just having the documentation without any context isn't even really enough either, because you can tell somebody how to do step, 1 through 5, right? But
Sure.
we all know that
Sure.
there's this tricky little thing or there's this one question that people ask, or there's a keyword that's associated to this topic, but it's not actually referenced in the guide. So it's not going to understand. So you have to tag things, and you have to use that actual experience that the customer support team likely has, and layer on the context to the content in order for it to really be, in order for AI to be effective.
Well,
Right.
with what you just said, I definitely am already sold on B-Link, and I'm not trying to turn this into a commercial. That's not what this podcast is about. But right, I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
so let me ask you a question then, Katie. Is that one of the biggest misconceptions about companies that have product launches, product adoption, is that they miss the mark because of those types of things? Or is there something deeper that you want to talk about as well, that you've seen?
I think if we're going to, just to bring AI back in, I think product
Sure.
launches in themselves have evolved because of the introduction of AI. And it is a lot easier to launch a product because AI will tell you, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Did you think about, how are you going to train your employees? How are you going to train your sellers? How are you going to train your sales engineers? How are you going to train your customers? So I think there's not as much of an, historically, training was an afterthought, right? So the product team is like, who owns training? We don't want it. And a lot of our contacts that we work with at a cloud service provider level are product managers, because they own the product. And that can be a lot of things, but none of them love owning training, right? So they will work with us
Right.
as an outsourced vendor to handle the training, which could be all of the digital assets that support the product documentation itself that is customer facing, maybe not internal. So engineering or internal technical training, they will take on, or they will own themselves, but customer facing, something that's at the customer admin level or below, that type of documentation, you know, shipping that off, or having us augment an existing team to do that.
Yeah.
Now, Ken, let me just ask this question, since I think it's relevant to this, and then please chime in. There's a ton of digital content being created, though, right? I mean, companies keep spewing out content, but most of it doesn't drive the behavior that they're looking for.
Correct.
What separates captivating content, if you will, or behavioral modifying content versus just checking a box and saying,
Yeah.
well, I have this and I have that? Because
Yeah.
that's something that I've experienced with some very large companies over the years, being in the telecom space, 3 decades now. Can you speak to, we have a lot of small and medium service providers that listen to our show that Ken and I both know. I think they'd be interested in knowing, a little pearl of wisdom from you is, what is the difference between just content and then captivating content?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the first thing is that, quality over quantity. So, making sure that what you are spending your time on is quality, is professional, is something you can be proud of, is something that your sellers would be proud to go to a customer and say, hey, we have that. Once you sign up with us, look, these are all of the great assets that your employees are going to have to use to learn how to use your product. And as a byproduct of the training assets, they actually have a demo, right? So it's a video that shows exactly how everything works. You could show an IT admin, here's the capabilities of our product, here's what it can do. It's ultimately training, but it's also a demo slash marketing-ish in a way, right? It's like adjacent to marketing. It can be used in the pre-sales process, I guess, is my point. So I think thinking about it like that, and then, with everything changing so fast and AI, one of the things that we have been reminding our customers of, especially those that do engage with us on video content, our stuff is very high end. It's quality. We have a process that we have refined over 16 years. We're always introducing new tools into our process and try to keep things super modern. But if you're doing video, there is a text-based audio script along with that video. That is a fantastic supplemental asset for your AI. So you have an entire transcript of your video already available that you could leverage in any sort of future AI deployment that you had. So trying to get our customers, and some aren't ready, right? Some providers aren't there yet. They're like, everybody's going to call support right now.
Yeah.
We're not ready for this.
Let me ask you a question about that then. Is it, as you were speaking, I'm thinking, okay, how have I actually engaged with training and onboarding and digital content and so forth when I've had a new product presented to me? And my question to you is it more about what you say to the user, or is it when and how? Like, in other words, what works? Does it vary? Does it depend? Like, what, does that mean anything? Or today, is everyone just, they want instant gratification, just make it consumption based? It's got to be there when they want it. Or is there a timing element that you say to your client, for product adoption, it's best to do it this way?
Right. That's a good question. And I think that's actually an area where our content and our customers' marketing teams can do better, because from an adoption perspective, there's the event of onboarding where you do your training. Then, okay, if you couldn't make it to training, or hey, all new hires that come in after this day one, they still need to get trained. Here's all the digital assets that you have at your fingertips to learn. But over time, the technology is evolving. There's new features that are rolled out. There's new services that are rolled out. So there's almost a communication plan when it comes, like you had said, with the timing that needs to be an alignment between, if product owns the training content, aligning with marketing and saying, hey, we're adding a new feature to our application. It's rolling out next month. Well, cool. Unless the customers log in and find it themselves, how are they going to know about this? So it's like really driving adoption with, ongoing communication on some of these product updates in a really organized cadence.
Well, let me ask a follow-up to that whole section there. So anytime there's change, particularly in a PBX, whether it's hosted on-site, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of, backlash or reluctance and things like that. So I've been through a number of training, obviously, for different platforms and stuff. How do you, I'm going to say, humanize it for the end customer to consume it, right? Because they don't just want to go through, here's your manual, flip to
Yeah.
page 12. And I know you guys don't do that, but as an example, there's still service providers that literally just give them a printed out user guide,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing human about that, humanizing about that. So even in your videos and things, how do you tackle that aspect of the training, just the reluctance to learn something on the end user part? So
Right. Yeah. Short things, short, small pieces, very, very short topics, which actually, as
Consumer.
we're going into AI world, that's how AI learns too. So
Yep.
it's like we have to have very small topics. It can't be, it's, for example, like setting up your auto attendant. Well, that is a very broad topic because
Sure.
you need to set up your dialing options. You need to set up your greeting. You need to set up your hours of operation. So there's really, in that example, at least 3 topics in one. So breaking it down in a way that is digestible and consumable for the user is absolutely key. And whether we're doing like a quick start guide, a smart book or a video, it's always the smallest pieces you can possibly get. Yep.
That's good.
All right, Katie. So now I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here, and I want to talk about customer experience now. I don't know a single organization that doesn't claim that they prioritize CX.
Yeah.
But how is it typically measured incorrectly today, in your opinion? And maybe what should companies really be prioritizing or paying attention to instead? And then as a caveat to that, is there a metric that CX organizations use today or departments that maybe we should stop measuring? Or maybe changing the way we look at it, at least, right? Revisit that data. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a high level, churn rates are, well, if they left, they weren't happy. Okay, well, by the time they leave, they've been unhappy for a super long time. So what is happening in the life of their contract? And what is it? And I don't know if I have the right answer of like what that measurable is, but it has to happen ongoing. And whether it's stat scores with tickets or I see in our industry, and it's funny because in other like SaaS-based businesses, I don't think that it's like this. So for some reason, when it comes to voice communications, it's very old school. Like, if you wanted to call Google, good luck finding a phone number, right? Like that you can't.
Right.
You literally cannot call them, right? But we have customers that like the only way to get a hold of us for a support ticket is to call us, and so it's like opposite. And I don't know if there's some measurables. There's actually a pretty cool company I recently we caught up, and they're doing some neat stuff in the CX space that is measuring and really diving in using AI and recorded calls in their support centers to really figure out what the problems are, and then using that data to make changes within the organization, within the support. Maybe it's a product thing that's not working, or they're consistently getting tickets on this. So I think it's getting really creative with the data. So many companies have all of this information. It's how do you get the right insights out of the data that you have? So I don't know if I really answered your question, Dave, but I think it's
no, you certainly did. I mean, what I heard you say is that hey, listen to your customer. If they're leaving you, they probably already complained at least once. As far as a data point, yes, a CSAT is certainly a score, but that's typically post a transaction.
Right.
So, with new technology, embracing, VCon and AI and other
Yeah,
technologies, CX tools, you could technically in real time or near real time do something about it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, Sentiment analysis and transcription review could
Mhm.
also be used in a much more intelligent way today. Um, you know, I think Net Promoter Score, I think
Mhm.
CSAT scores, they have their place. Um, but for me, I think they need to be looked at a little differently today than maybe the way they were used, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
My concern is maybe a little greater, and I'm going to ask you this question this way then. Do you think that a lot of organizations who talk about and they say they care about customer experience, is it just performative theater?
That is certainly out there, and I think there's some that haven't left the thinking that like white glove is the way to do this. Like white glove does not scale. You can still have an amazing customer experience by having the right tools and automation and processes in place to stay in touch with your customers, to reach out to your customers, to find out what their challenges are. It doesn't require this this white glove, hands-on, non-scalable, like humans on everything thing. So I struggle with that sometimes, just and maybe those are providers that just are like scaling isn't their growth plans are not, it's not part of their plan, right? Like I think I've seen that, and if that's where you want
Yes.
to be, then yes, absolutely do the white glove. But I struggle with working with clients that have the white glove but want to grow. I'm like, we have to get some different tools in place so that you feel comfortable that your customers are going to have a really great customer experience post sale, but without that requiring, you to have, one, CSM per
Yeah.
every 3 clients,
Right,
like
right.
you
So
can't grow like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have a longtime, colleague slash friend in the industry, and he still flies out to every install.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, how do you scale that way?
Yeah.
So I think he's in that I'm comfortable.
The comfort, and he wants to keep his
Yes.
customers. There will
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely be retention in that
Right.
model, right? Like
100%.
his
Yeah.
customers aren't going to go anywhere, but
No.
if he wants to triple the number of customers that he has, that's going to be really challenging. So
Yeah,
it's kind of
exactly.
aligning on CX and growth, and understanding those goals. So, um, yeah, and putting together a strategy based on, are you trying to, you know, provide a tremendous customer experience and grow and
Right.
scale, then we can talk about ways to do that.
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
sounds to me, Katie and Ken, that what I'm hearing here from both of you is it's defining the commitment to customer experience that works for the specific size or scope or interest or scale of that organization. That's
Right.
what I'm hearing here, right? So, because
Right.
you're right. I mean, if I'm going to just market in a 20-mile radius of my headquarters and I have enough of a workforce and I have enough of a market share that
The
I want
market
to
space.
continue to do
Yeah.
white glove, there's no reason why
Do
you
it.
can't have vans and vehicles and do all that. Absolutely.
$100%.
Own that customer, if you will, and give them the attention that they're asking for. But I would agree with you, if you're trying to go to a national level, um, it becomes much more complex. So then I think you have to revisit what a commitment to CX means in that
Yes.
regard. But it's not going
Yes.
to be white glove. It's going
Right.
to be something else. And whether
Hmm.
that is more automation, whether it's more empowerment by being able to do the things you want to do without even having to call a customer service
Right.
rep. It may be the antithesis of the
Hmm.
small white glove solution provider. But if it works and it works well, I would still say that might be a commitment to CX.
Yeah.
Do you agree with my opinion, or do you think that there's even more there that B-Lynk could offer as well, because you have these tools for, customer experience and for product adoption?
Hmm. No, I agree. I agree completely. It is, if a company has a, like you said, 20-mile radius, they have a big enough market there, they're doing white glove, it's working, but to try to replicate that across the country might be challenging nowadays to make margin that they want. So it just has to be a conversation in terms of what those two things mean and how they work, CX and growth work together. You know, yeah, the other piece of CX that like I'm kind of talking about CX in regards to the customer's experience post sale, right? With the product. So the product itself has a customer experience, component to it too. Is it easy to use? Is it, is it something that's intuitive? Like, can people figure it out very quickly? Is your experience with the product good? So there's absolutely, the product is a big piece of that. But I also think the customer experience journey starts like prior to the sale. No worries. No worries. So I know this is a very casual podcast.
It's all good.
Yeah, there is a guy that was going to bring me a coffee after his lunch and he forgot to bring it and he was feeling bad and it was really no big deal. But yeah, I'll have to get some Java after this call. So
no, you were talking about the customer journey.
Yeah, I think it starts before the deal is closed. And I think a lot of cloud service providers need to consider that with their sales force and how they're being trained. And because it can be so rocky at time of implementation if the salesperson hasn't really articulated things properly or doesn't fully understand the product or how it works or what it can do, or maybe misled them on a feature, or so I think that like sales product training is all part of CX because it can create such a smooth transition once the deal is signed that it really avoids those rocky roads that happen once the deal is moved into ops.
Is there a specific point in that customer journey then where you consistently see adoption fall off or CX drop? Is it post-sale but before onboarding? Is that the typical hiccup because sales has communicated a certain expectation and then onboarding has a set guideline of expectation? Or where is it consistently where you could come in and tell people this is where we've got to fix that gap?
Yeah, I don't know if it's consistent across. It's a little it can definitely can vary, but I think those organizations that really train their sellers on not only the product, that's super important, so they're not misleading their customers, but what are the next steps? What is the post-sale process? What does this look like? Oh, okay, you're going to get training. This is what's going to happen. Our PM is going to set you up with a training session, or the first thing that's going to happen is the project manager is going to reach out in 5 to 10 days, and making sure as an organization that whatever that process is, that you are committed to it and you execute on it, because it is truly your customer's first experience post a salesperson that is starting off this relationship. And also if it doesn't go smooth, or if the process is not defined, or there is a process but the process doesn't happen, then you're pulling the salesperson back in, wasting their time. They're supposed to be selling. Now they're joining on every project call because they're nervous that things are going sideways. So I think really getting that initial deployment process super smooth. And if you're growing and adding sellers, making sure they really understand what that looks like so they can explain that in that process in the sales process.
All right. So Katie, as you look ahead, say 2 to 3 years, how do you see user engagement and product adoption evolving, especially with AI, automation? And you just mentioned user expectations are changing.
Yeah, expectations, absolutely. Users, I think it's here. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, it's just going to evolve even faster and faster and faster. And I always encourage any customer that we're talking to today that is interested in content. I love having the second conversation, like, hey, I know you maybe haven't thought about introducing AI, whether it is a voice AI into your tier 1 support center, or is it a chat widget on your knowledge base or your help center? Both of them are AI, one voice, one, chat, text, or whatever. And if you haven't thought about it, that's fine. But this content is going to be required. Some shape of this is going to be required for that AI to work. And I think that has kind of been the drum that that we've been beating, and then really looking for forward-thinking organizations to understand, hey, it's one thing to have all this documentation and you've done a perfect job. You've got an A+, everything is documented, but you've also been in business for 10 years, and imagine all of the data that you have in those recorded calls that you've never touched, all of the data you have in your Zendesk ticketing system that's never aligned with your website, with your, with a support experience on your website. And how do we bring those things together? So it's like a merging of
it's getting rid of silos.
Yeah, it's in some of our engagements. So Blinky AI CX, not to be a commercial, but it is our AI product right now for customer training. But it's really interesting because there's all these silos within companies, and in order for this AI thing to really work best, even for customer facing stuff, those walls have to be taken down. The wall between product, between customer support, between project management that does or provisioning that does the onboarding, like all of this information is in these separate technical training. Like all of this information is in separate silos, and how do you bring those together in a way that will either provide great information internally to your teams or externally to customers through AI.
Creating a data lake of information, eliminating silos, trying to, a lot of these companies have multiple applications that do different things for their organization. So trying to cross-pollinate all that information into one solution that's just effective. It's going to be difficult, but it sounds like B-Lynk can certainly be one of the pillars to help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we can help. The most foundational piece is the documentation. That's like table stakes. Got to have that. Need to have that. You need to have that today, whether you think AI is going away and you don't believe in it. You still need to have documentation that's still required for your customers to use your product. And, if you want to keep your OpEx down and avoid those calls to tier 1 and tickets and whatnot, you got to have the docs. So we can do that.
Okay. So if you were advising a SaaS or even communications, CEO or the product manager in a company that's struggling with adoption right now, what's the first thing you tell them to stop doing? And maybe what's the first thing they should start doing instead? Is there something that you've seen after your 16, 17 years of doing this where, again, I use the word consistently, but at least to some degree, you've always had to shine a light on something? What would you recommend to them?
Mm-hmm. I mean, depending on where they're at, where they're at in this, I guess there's a lot of questions I would have. Talk to me about how are you measuring adoption? Are you measuring adoption based on churn rates? Are you measuring adoption based on activations of your software licenses? How are you measuring that? And then backtrack into what maybe caused that problem. And maybe it is a content issue. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a communication issue, an automation issue internally where users aren't getting the information, or, I think there's a variety of things that could drive adoption, but I do know where we can help in a SaaS-based organization or cloud-based organization is that product documentation and digital content that drives adoption and helps customers feel very comfortable on how to use your products in a real world, scenario, including, we can include examples or, typical use cases, in addition to all of the step-by-step, a lot of context around the documentation that makes it more of adoption content versus technical docs. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask some more questions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna get away from the industry for a second and ask you a question about being an entrepreneur, right? So you saw this, you got the spark, you wanted to go start your own business, and share to what you're comfortable with. But what is a mistake you think you made, and how did you recover from that mistake? right? Early on, we all make these mistakes when
Mm-hmm.
we're starting businesses, right? So what would be a good nugget of wisdom you can share with other people thinking about starting a business?
That's one. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. There's a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
Right? I mean, oh gosh.
Well, you remained humble by even admitting that, so that's
yeah,
good, right?
exactly.
Oh yeah, I could write a book. I mean, it is not easy and it can go
I could write two
from
books.
Yeah,
any
no kidding.
aspect of the organization. I mean, I think and this one happened to me not in the very beginning, but and it is a common thing and it frustrates me because it happened to me and I looked back and I was like, I knew better as a salesperson. I knew better. But don't get on Hope Island with you have to live in the reality, get your head out of your spreadsheet and focus on your customers, understand what's really real. And because it can be very easy to get caught up in this giant opportunity or this big thing and not making any decisions until things are finalized. So it's like, I just call it Hope Island. You got to get off of Hope Island. And while you're on
Yeah.
Hope Island, thinking that something is going to happen or this big opportunity is going to close that you've been working on for, 6, 9 months, don't make any decisions based on that happening. And that's a mistake that I made once and it still bites me today. And it was a rookie move and I wasn't a rookie. But you get excited about these things and you just have to get back to reality, get back to your customers, really understand what your customers need and yeah, focus on those relationships and get off of Hope Island.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good meme shirt. Hope
Yeah,
Island.
Hope Island. I know. I'm
With a
like,
big circle through it and a
Yeah,
line.
I like
yeah,
it.
yeah, yes,
So
because it
Katie,
can be,
I have.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
No,
cool.
go
What
ahead.
was that, Katie? No, no. I was just gonna say I have one last question for you. And I ask all our guests this question. What is one thing in this evolving ecosystem that we're in that we're not talking about, but perhaps we should be?
Hmm. Well, we already kind of talked about it a little bit, and I I do think that with AI transforming the way we do business and so many things right now is getting that silo mentality. So one thing that have seen in our industry is there's so many technical companies, right? It's like our customers are, for the most part, if it's a vendor, it's a software product, like with a really cool technology, and everybody's thinking like AI in my product, AI in my product. I need to have AI in my product to be relevant. And I mean, I already talked about our AI product. I mean, I'm kind of guilty of the same thing, but I think what's missing in our industry right now is understanding the impact of AI within the organization. And that goes back to that like silo discussion. So it's like
Yeah.
focusing, taking, in your AI strategy, there's, internal using AI internally for your operations to do things smarter, faster, to grow without having to hire at the pace you once had to hire at. Um, but then also there's AI in your product. And I think within our industry, everybody gets fascinated by putting AI into their product feature, feature functionality, AI, we have an AI, this and that. And I think where I see in our industry is just the large opportunity to impact, your organization by making your own company more efficient with the use of AI. And it's a great way to understand it better. So before, pushing it out as a product, make sure all of your employees understand it and make sure you're using it yourselves. So that's kind of what I think, very industry specific, what I've seen at some of these events that could be something that's being overlooked.
I agree 100%. And this goes back to an earlier part of our conversation we had today. Do they even know the feature sets their customers are currently using? And do they even know what the customers want?
Right.
They're
Mm-hmm.
pushing the AI as the new shiny object, but
Yeah.
has the customer even asked for that?
Right. Right. Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. It's AI everything, but just first, like, look inside your own house.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say AI for the sake of AI is irrelevant to me. AI for the sake
Yeah.
of making my business better
Right.
has some value. So again, I would agree with you that the shiny new thing is great, but there has to be a real reason for me to want to deploy this. And a lot of businesses are small to medium-sized businesses. They
Mhm.
need to know that this new gadget that they're going to be purchasing is going to benefit their business in some
Yeah.
meaningful way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not the promise of it. They need to know it's going to do something. I jokingly made a comment to someone a couple of weeks ago where I said, I don't see the average small business, that has maybe 20 extensions wanting to do a $30,000, $50,000 proof of concept to hope
Right.
that maybe someday this AI might do something. I'm
Right.
sure there's someone out there that'll say, oh, I volunteer, but by and large, these businesses want to purchase something that's going to immediately create some form of impact that benefits
Right.
their business.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great advice, Katie. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ken?
No, this has been great. Thanks for coming on today, Katie. We appreciate having you on as a
Yes.
guest. And
Yes. Thank you for joining.
I'll close this out here and say goodbye to all our listeners. And thanks for joining us and hitting those like and subscribe buttons below. And you can see what else we're up to at engagep2p.com. So until next time, everyone, keep building, keep leading, and as always, keep it at 100% uptime. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.